International Airport, where routine blurs into background noise and no one looks twice at a man in a wheelchair, a German shepherd named Coda stopped mid-step silent, unmoving, his amber eyes locked on the footrest of an airport-issued chair. No bark, no growl, just stillness. To most it looked like nothing, but to his handler, Lieutenant Maya Rhodes, it was a warning. Moments later, what they found inside left the entire room. Before we take you into that moment, hit like if you believe dogs sense what machines miss. Subscribe for more true canine stories. And tell us in the comments where are you watching from, and would you have trusted Coda's instinct? The arrival terminal at Miami International buzzed with its usual symphony, rolling suitcases, distant PA announcements, impatient sighs of travelers hurrying through customs. Lieutenant Maya Rhodes had heard it all 1,000 times, and by now it was just white noise. 7 years in the K-9 division had conditioned her ears to filter out everything except the sound of a subtle shift in breathing, the faintest note of panic in a voice, or more importantly, the quietest change in her partner's posture. Coda moved with his usual deliberate grace beside her, the tan and black German shepherd pacing fluidly with his nose low and ears twitching. Most dogs barked when they sensed something. Coda didn't. His silence was his signal, and today he stopped walking, dead still. Maya's steps faltered. She turned her gaze to him instinctively, noting the tautness in his body, the way his right front paw hovered mid-step. His hackles weren't raised, he wasn't growling, but something about his eyes, they had narrowed, fixed in one direction like a sniper's scope. Her eyes followed his line of sight. Across the terminal waiting zone, surrounded by oblivious travelers, sat a man in a standard-issue port. He was older, maybe mid-60s, with salt and pepper hair combed neatly back, brown skin weathered but dignified, wearing a lightweight tan jacket and slacks. A canvas shoulder bag rested in his lap. He looked tired, maybe a little lost, but nothing suspicious. Nothing that should make a battle-added canine freeze like a statue. Except, there it was. The eyes, not the man's posture, not his bag, just his eyes. Maya had made a career out of reading people, and this man's eyes weren't just tired. They were searching the room the way people do when they're waiting for something or someone, when they're bracing for what comes next. She took a breath and tapped her comm. Control Rhodes, possible canine response at Terminal D. No aggression, possible non-verbal alert. Copy that, Rhodes. Do you require backup? Negative for now, proceeding with secondary approach. Maya crouched beside Coda, who didn't break his stare. She murmured, "Talk to me, buddy." He didn't move, didn't even twitch, just held his ground like a soldier awaiting orders. That alone sent a ripple of tension up Maya's spine. She rose and crossed the distance calmly, trying not to spook the man or herself. "Sir," she said as she stopped at his side, "I'm Officer Rhodes with Customs. We're doing a routine sweep. How are you today?" The man looked up, smiling with what seemed like genuine politeness. His voice carried the soft cadence of the Midwest. "Doing okay, officer. Just waiting for my daughter. Long flight from Lisbon. Legs locked up bad, so they gave me this." He nodded toward the wheelchair. Maya's eyes scanned him slowly. His hands were calm, resting atop the canvas bag. No visible tremors, no tics. But still something unsettled her. Maybe it was the way his fingers curled slightly over the strap, as if holding onto it a little too tightly, or the way his left foot tapped against the footrest, not rhythmically but with a kind of compulsive motion. She stepped to the side and addressed him with professional warmth. "What's your name, sir?" "Ezekiel Brooks," he replied smoothly, handing her his passport. Everything checked out. Clean history, retired aeronautical engineer, U.S. citizen. No red flags. Just a man coming home. And yet Coda hadn't moved, still locked on like he was guarding a vault door. "Sir," Maya said gently, "my partner's trained to detect certain types of substances, components, or unusual alterations. He's indicating something about this area here." She gestured to the lower half of the wheelchair. "So I'm going to ask you to come with us to our secondary screening. It's likely nothing, but we'd like to be sure." Ezekiel didn't protest. He nodded, exhaling with mild frustration. "Of course, do what you have to. These things always find me when I'm tired." Maya offered a small nod and tapped her comm again. "Control Rhodes, I'm escorting passenger Brooks to Bay 6 for secondary. Non-combined or exhaustion? Hard to tell. but she tucked the image away in her mind. It had been a long time since Kota had gone rigid like that. And he had never been wrong. The corridor toward Bay 6 was narrow, clinical, washed in white light and metal fixtures. Kota's claws tapped steadily on the tile floor, echoing off the sterile walls. Ezekiel's wheelchair creaked slightly, but otherwise no one spoke. When they reached the screening room, Maya offered Ezekiel a chair and asked if he was comfortable. He nodded, rubbing his knees. Sciatica, he explained, and too proud to ask for help until it's too late. Maya nodded. She'd heard similar words from veterans, stroke survivors, and folks just trying to get through the day without being seen. But something still gnawed at her gut. Kota, meanwhile, had shifted only slightly. He now stared down the footrest of the wheelchair like it was breathing. No growl, no bark, but all tension. A technician entered moments later, scanning the room and giving Maya a quiet nod. "You think we've got something?" he asked under his breath. "I don't know," she replied. "But he does." The tech looked at Kota. "He ever been wrong?" Maya shook her head. "Not once." As the technician pulled on gloves and approached the wheelchair with a handheld scanner, Maya crossed her arms and kept her eyes on Ezekiel. His face was calm, but his jaw tensed just slightly. Kota didn't flinch, and neither did Maya. The scanning technician, Adrian Voss, crouched carefully beside the wheelchair as his device emitted a soft mechanical whine, oscillating lights sweeping across the metal frame. Maya stood just behind him, arms crossed, trying to control the quickened pace of her own breathing. Kota sat 10 feet away, still statuesque, his eyes locked onto the footrest of the airport-issued wheelchair with a predator's precision. Adrian glanced over his shoulder. "No chemical traces, no density inconsistencies," he said, voice matter-of-fact, almost bored. "So far, it's just a standard chair." Maya didn't reply. Her eyes were glued to Kota. That wasn't how he responded to luggage laced with narcotics. Nor was it the same behavior he'd shown around hidden electronics or weapons. This posture, the tense stillness, the narrowed eyes, the tail low but stiff, this was something she hadn't seen in years, not since a specific training module back in Georgia. Her mind raced back. It was a late summer simulation, codenamed Dagger Bay. A mock terminal was built for K9 units to learn detection under duress. They had used modified wheelchairs in one scenario, embedding a compartment in the footrest with a sealed vial of VX, a banned nerve agent meant only for extreme-level drills. Kota had been barely 18 months old then, and yet he'd identified the chemical compound before the supervising officers could even finish setting up. It was the only time she had seen him freeze like this. Until now. Adrian stood, brushing his hands against his... "Nothing." He turned to Maya. "Want me to disassemble the bottom panel?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Start with the left foot plate. I don't care if the scanner says it's clean. He's never wrong." From the corner of the room, Ezekiel Brooks cleared his throat. "Officer Rhodes, is there a problem?" Maya turned to him. "Mr. Brooks, there may be a design flaw in the chair. Just being cautious." The man nodded, though his brow furrowed just slightly, and he tapped his index finger on the handle of his canvas bag. Maya noted the motion, a pacifying gesture, maybe nervousness, but not guilt. That wasn't what was bothering her. She refocused. Adrian retrieved a precision screwdriver set from his tool roll and knelt again, this time feeling along the edge of the footrest panel with his fingernails. After a moment, he stopped. "There's a seam here," he said quietly. "Not standard placement." "Is it mechanical?" Maya asked. "Doesn't feel like it," Adrian muttered, eyes narrowing. That was enough. Maya stepped closer, heart thudding, memories of that drill sharpening her focus. "Proceed," she said, "but carefully." "You sure?" Adrian asked, glancing up. "This chair came from Lisbon. Could be customs mod, nothing malicious." Maya lowered her voice. "Or it could be a ghost compartment." Adrian hesitated a beat, then began loosening the screws. Kota let out a low huff but didn't move. That simple exhale meant something. He recognized the sound, the action, the resonance of this space being tampered with. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't a whine. It was acknowledgement. The first panel came off without incident, just insulation foam and aluminum bolts. But the second on the right side offered resistance. Adrian's screwdriver slipped once, then caught, and with a dull metallic pop, the plate came free slightly like the release of pressure. No hiss, no smoke, but the air around them seemed to change. "There's something behind it," Adrian said. Maya leaned forward cautiously. "A kind of something? Thin? Flat? Something tucked inside the frame. It's wrapped. Material. Looks synthetic, like mylar or carbon mesh." Maya exhaled. "Pull it." Adrian didn't move immediately. "You're sure? No tripwires, no pressure triggers. But still, Coda would have indicated," she replied. "Just pull it slow." As he extracted the item, Maya watched Coda's body closely. When the packet cleared the frame, he let out another breath and shifted his weight. No longer frozen, but not relaxed either. It was a signal, contained but not neutralized. Adrian placed the object gently on the stainless steel table. It was about the size of a paperback novel, wrapped in tightly sealed synthetic film. Smooth, flat, unmarked, Maya reached for a pair of gloves and moved toward it. Her gut screamed louder. "I'll open it," Adrian offered. "You read me if I missed something." Maya nodded. He began cutting along one edge, slowly peeling back the layers like a surgeon. What emerged beneath made both of them stop. Not powder, not tech paper, folded sheets, dozens, maybe more, each one thin, grayish, and stamped faintly with symbols. Cyrillic letters, diagrams, seals. Maya didn't need a translation to know this was not casual smuggling. These were schematics, possibly intelligence grade. Adrian's expression changed. "What the hell is this?" Maya shook her head slowly. "Something we weren't supposed to find." Just then, the comm on her hip buzzed. "Rhodes, status?" She stepped away to respond. "We've got foreign documents embedded in a modified wheelchair. Possibly surveillance or tech transfer. Advise Federal Liaison. Copy. Securing the area." Maya clicked off, eyes returning to the packet. Adrian continued examining. "These seals look old," he said, "like Cold War air clearance." Maya nodded. "But the chair's new." That dissonance unsettled her. Nothing about this made sense yet, and no machine would have caught it. Only Coda. The tech stepped back and wiped his brow. "You were right." "No," Maya replied, looking at her partner. "He was..." She turned to Ezekiel, who had sat quietly the entire time, his face a mask of polite confusion. "Mr. Brooks, I need to ask you some questions. Did you notice anything unusual about the wheelchair before you used it?" He replied. "It was just there. I didn't bring one. The attendant told me to grab whichever was free near the gate. I picked the closest. Did you see anyone near it?" I don't remember. Maybe someone walked past. I wasn't paying attention." Maya frowned. His answers were too casual for the level of infiltration this required. Unless... She looked back at the open wheelchair base. What if the chair wasn't just a vessel? What if it was a switch point? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp tap on the glass from the observation room. A junior officer held up a small portable X-ray scan done without Maya's request. The scan showed nothing dangerous. But beneath the footrest structure, in a sublayer they hadn't touched yet, there was another cavity. Smaller, embedded deeper. Maya's stomach turned. She stepped forward and knocked on the glass. "Scan again, higher frequency, look for microcircuitry." The junior officer hesitated. "Mata." Behind her, Adrian spoke softly. "If this is what I think it is, it's not just documents they're moving, it's access." Mata didn't answer. Her fingers curled tight around the edge of the table. Coda shifted again, this time letting out a low, nearly audible growl, not fear, but warning. Maya looked into his amber eyes. "What else did they hide from us, boy?" She turned toward the wheelchair. Maya leaned closer to the scan projected on the tablet screen, her brow furrowing at the odd shape nestled deep within the wheelchair's support base. It wasn't large, just a sliver of asymmetry embedded into the curved metal near the axle of the footrest, but it was there, clear as day under High Huntry's exoskeletoid rotator. The scan for a better angle. That's not part of the original frame. That material's different, denser, and it's curved too perfectly to be structural reinforcement. Maya's pulse picked up. "Can you pull it out without tearing the entire base apart?" Adrian shrugged, already reaching for a smaller tool set. "I'll go at it from the underplate. Give me 5 minutes." As he lay on his back under the inspection table and began unscrewing fasteners with the patience of a surgeon, Maya stepped back, keeping her gaze on Ezekiel. The old man sat still in the corner chair, clutching the paper cup of water someone had handed him earlier. His eyes were alert but clouded with a kind of growing dread, the kind that comes when you start realizing you've been made a pawn without ever knowing the game existed. Kota had moved only slightly, shifting his weight to his left side but keeping his eyes locked on the wheelchair. Maya didn't need a signal this time. His body language screamed one truth. This isn't over. Adrian grunted under the table, then emerged holding a flat, curved panel no larger than a wallet, wrapped in a matte, dark gray composite that immediately gave Maya pause. "Feel that?" Adrian said, handing it to her with gloved hands. It was lighter than it looked, but there was a strange texture to it. Soft, almost rubberized, but with no visible seams or adhesive marks. She ran her fingers along the edge. "Radar-absorbing coating," she said flatly. "This is military grade, used in stealth aircraft fuselage and advanced drone skins. That's not something someone just picks up at Home Depot," Adrian muttered. "Whoever made this knew exactly how to beat passive scan." Maya flipped the panel over and spotted a microscopic slit near the center. With a gentle push, the slit gave way and the composite unfolded like a clamshell to reveal a precisely slotted cavity. Nestled inside, flush with the surface, was a single vacuum-sealed pouch, thin, rectangular, and wrapped in a silver laminate sheath, with faint electrical shielding woven through the lining. "You see in this?" Adrian whispered. "Because I don't think this is drugs." "No," Maya murmured. "This is something worse." She lifted the pouch carefully onto the examination table as Adrian activated a high-intensity decryption light. As the beam passed over the surface, faint ink markings shimmered to life beneath the laminate Cyrillic letters. Rows of them, interspersed with what looked like numeric sequences and geometric layouts. Adrian leaned in closer, adjusting the angle of the lamp. "Those are security schematics, floor plans. That one looks like..." "Hang on," he pointed at a symbol near the top left corner. "That's JFK, New York's Terminal 4. Maya's blood turned cold. "This one says lists, and that BCN. Barcelona." She flipped to another set of pages beneath the transparent cover. Each one revealed more schematics. Entry points, cargo route overlays, personnel clearance zones. This wasn't just documentation. It was operational intel. Her fingers froze when she spotted a small plastic card tucked into a pouch inside the lining. It looked like a standard airport ID badge, except the security chip embedded in its corner glowed faintly under the UV light. "That's not from any US agency I know," Adrian said quietly. "And that chip? It's unregistered. There's no metadata signature. That means it's either blank or approximately prime." She had seen badges like this before in counter intel reports. Black budget debriefs where federal agencies whispered about ghost clearances. This wasn't for someone sneaking past TSA to smuggle a few kilos of coke. This was a keycard into the machinery of an international transport hub. Possibly more than one. "Jesus," Adrian said, stepping back. "If that badge works, whoever holds it could walk into any cargo terminal in 3 countries without tripping a single alarm. And if they knew the schedules, they'd know when the cameras go dark, when the guards rotate, when the shipments leave the floor." Maya closed her eyes for half a second, piecing the thread together. 3 international airports, simultaneously mapped. This isn't random. This is coordinated infrastructure penetration. She turned back toward Ezekiel, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Brooks," she said steady and slow, "you need to tell me everything you remember from Lisbon. Who gave you the chair? Who touched it before you did? Anything. Anyone." He looked pale now, blinking rapidly. "I already told you. A young guy, vest with the airline logo. I didn't get a name." He just gestured toward the row of wheelchairs near the gate. "I picked the closest one. That's all." "Did he touch it, adjust anything?" "I don't know, he bent down, maybe. But I thought he was just checking the brakes or something." Maya swallowed hard. "What about your daughter? Who were you meeting here?" Ezekiel hesitated. Margaret. Margaret Given Wilson. She lives in Coral Gables. She was going to pick me up. I haven't seen her in 2 years." "Have you spoken with her recently?" "We talked yesterday. She said she'd be waiting by baggage claim." Maya made a mental note to have agents intercept and verify the identity immediately. If someone had intercepted Ezekiel's itinerary, they could have staged a pickup to recover the chair on US soil. Adria was already sealing the pouch and badge into tamper-proof evidence bags, tagging each with high pinabig markers. "We need a federal courier and a secure vault," he muttered. Now, Maya stepped into the adjacent observation room where her backup officer stood by. "Tell me surveillance is running." The officer nodded. "Pulling Lisbon Gate footage now, also checking for any badge discrepancies or unlogged employees." "Good. Flag everything. We're officially dealing with a potential breach of 3 national entry points." The officer didn't ask questions, just picked up the phone and began relaying orders. When Maya turned back toward the exam room, Kota was standing now, not stiff, not tense, but ready. His nose was angled slightly down, like he could already smell what was coming next. Maya took one last look at the chair, now fully disassembled, its harmless aluminum shell peeled away to reveal a cavity so cleverly designed it could have passed for factory standard. She stared at the composite material still resting on the cart, the matte, radar-absorbing shell, and knew instinctively this wasn't the end. It was just the first layer. Maya stepped back into the screening room and took a breath as the reinforced door closed behind her with a solid thud. The chill of the air conditioning brushed against her neck, but it wasn't what made her skin tighten. It was the uncertainty in Ezekiel's eyes, the way he looked at her, not with defiance or guilt but with the raw confusion of someone watching a world shift beneath their feet. She lowered herself to eye level, perching on the edge of the stainless steel counter. "Mr. Brooks," she began, her voice softer now, tempered with control, "we found materials embedded in the wheelchair that raise serious national security concerns. This isn't a misunderstanding or some random object misplacement. What we found is intentional, engineered, and dangerous. I need to know, did you put anything in that chair?" He blinked slowly, his mouth slightly parted as if the air had become thicker around him. "You?" he said, his voice low, the syllables shaky. "No, ma'am. I didn't even want the damn thing. My leg locked up at the gate in Lisbon, and the clerk just pointed toward a lineup of chairs parked near the glass. I picked the closest one, sat down, and waited for boarding." Maya watched his micro-expressions, the flutter of the eyelids, the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, the way his hands gripped the cup too tightly. She wasn't looking for deception, she was watching for the absence of it. After a long pause, she asked, "Did anyone touch the chair before you sat in it?" Ezekiel furrowed his brow, reaching back through recent memory like someone groping in a fog. "I think someone did. A man in a vest. He looked like airline staff. Short buzz cut, clipboard." He bent down, adjusted something. "I assumed he was checking brakes or whatever they do. He didn't speak to me, just nodded and walked off." Maya's jaw tensed. "Did he give you the chair directly?" "No, he just motioned toward them, didn't assign anything. I picked the first one. That one." He nodded toward the dismantled remains on the exam table. "You didn't notice anything odd about it?" she pressed. "It was heavier than I expected, but I chalked that up to nerves. I haven't used a wheelchair before." Maya leaned back slightly, her eyes narrowing not with suspicion toward him, but toward the bigger picture unfolding in her mind. "Who were you coming to see in Miami?" she asked. "My daughter," he replied, a flicker of emotion finally showing in his voice. Margaret Given Wilson. I haven't seen her in over 2 years. We've talked, video calls mostly. I've been distant, not proud of that." His voice faltered. "I wanted to fix things." Maya nodded slowly but didn't write it down. She had already sent an agent to verify Margaret's existence and track her movement. At this point, nothing was safe to assume. "Mr. Brooks," she said, more slowly now, "do you have any experience in aerospace?" He looked up, startled. "What makes you ask that?" She gave a faint, pointed glance to his left lapel. "The pin you're wearing." His hand reflexively went to it, fingers brushing the worn brass emblem that had become nearly invisible under the tan lapel of his travel jacket. That's old," he murmured. "I didn't think anyone would recognize it." Maya stood and stepped closer, inspecting the small insignia more carefully. It was a stylized winged emblem with 3 letters etched beneath it in faded relief. EMIR. A Cold War acronym she hadn't heard since her time working alongside NATO archives. "You worked on EMIR?" she asked, not masking the gravity in her tone. He hesitated. "Yes, I was part of a think tank that worked under it in the late 70s. We designed structural components for unpiloted recon craft. I left before the black budget stuff came in. Most of it was theoretical. You didn't disclose this in your customs declaration, she said flatly. I didn't think it mattered anymore. That was a lifetime ago. I've been retired almost 15 years. My clearance expired decades back. Maya nodded, still watching him closely. Did anyone at Lisbon know your background? Not unless someone dug deep, he said, the weariness now crawling into his posture. I keep to myself, no blogs, no lectures. I just garden and feed stray cats. Maya stepped away and walked to the console where the disassembled badge and documents lay sealed under evidence wrap. She stared at the Cyrillic diagrams, the schematics labeled with foreign security rotations and cargo entry routes, the sealed keycard that held no name yet pulsed faintly under infrared scan. And suddenly it hit her. The badge hadn't been designed to impersonate a current employee. It wasn't fake. It was inherited, passed along through access lineages not tracked in any modern system. Ezekiel wasn't targeted because he was suspicious. He was chosen because he wasn't. He was invisible to new data, a relic, a ghost in the system. Adrian, she called out, run a silent trace on Cold War personnel connected to EMI or DARPA between 78 and 84. See if anyone else from that roster has traveled through European hubs in the last 18 months. Adrian blinked. You think this is part of a pattern? No, Maya said, her voice taut. I think this is the pattern. She turned back to Ezekiel, who was now hunched slightly forward, his hands trembling more visibly. Someone used your history against you. They knew your name would slip past most security flags. They knew you wouldn't question a free chair. They didn't need your knowledge. They needed your profile. I've been carrying that, he whispered. Those maps, those codes, inside that chair? Maya didn't answer. His expression already told her he understood. It was horror layered with a kind of ashamed disbelief, like a veteran realizing he had slept through the breach of a base camp. They made me part of this, he murmured. Without me knowing, without consent. That's what makes it clean, Maya said. You weren't a mule, you were a container. One that didn't know it was hollow. As she spoke, her phone buzzed. It was the field agent in Coral Gables. The message was brief. One line. Margaret Given Wilson not found at listed address. That name belongs to a deceased woman, died 3 years ago. Maya felt her stomach turn, her eyes shifting instinctively toward Ezekiel, who was still speaking something about regret, about absence, about trying to fix things, but she couldn't hear him anymore. Her mind had already moved ahead, past the lie he'd been told, past the badge in the evidence bag, toward a far more disturbing possibility. If Margaret wasn't waiting for him, then who was? And more importantly, who was supposed to retrieve the package from him once he arrived? Maya stood silently beside the one-way glass of the adjacent observation room, her eyes fixed on the figure of Ezekiel Brooks as he sat hunched forward in the interview chair, both hands gripping the paper cup like it was the only solid thing left in his crumbling reality. The words from her agent still echoed in her mind. Margaret Given Wilson had died 3 years ago in a car crash just outside Orlando. Whoever had contacted Ezekiel to arrange this trip, to promise a reunion, had been lying from the beginning. That lie had guided him to Lisbon. That lie had placed him in the exact chair with an embedded compartment lined with military-grade stealth material. That lie had smuggled classified documents across the Atlantic, using an aging man who believed he was finally reconnecting with family. Maya pushed down the fury rising in her chest and turned to the forensics specialist who had just entered, holding a fresh printout. Tell me you found something, she said sharply. The analyst nodded, spreading the scan results on the light table. We ran a forensic deconstruction on the keycard found inside the footrest. At first glance, it looked like a modern RFID card, but that's just surface layering. Underneath, the circuit design matches an internal prototype used by the Air Mobility Research Initiative between 1989 and 1991. Maya's eyes narrowed. That's not possible. Those cards were decommissioned 30 years ago. Correct, the analyst said, tapping one of the overlays. But this one's been Whoever built it kept the old encryption interface but embedded a secondary signal router on the back layer. It's designed to spoof a legacy clearance in a current environment. How well would that work today? Maya asked. If you're targeting systems that still have dormant ports or backups using legacy logins, It could bypass most modern surveillance entirely, especially in cargo terminals still running mixed systems. Which airports use mixed? Lisbon, JFK, and Barcelona. Maya felt the weight of those names crash into her again. 3 cities, 3 major hubs, and now this card, tied to an access format that should have been forgotten, matched perfectly with security documents found in that chair. The thought formed unspoken at first, but crawling quickly to the front of her mind. Run Emir cross-paraffins, she said. Find anything that connects it to alternative communications architecture, anything tagged with Zephyr. The analyst's eyes flicked up. You know Zephyr was buried, unbury it said. Now, as the analyst began typing, Maya returned to the room. Ezekiel looked up as she entered, his face pale, the lines around his mouth deepened. She didn't sit this time. Mr. Brooks, she said, holding the badge between 2 fingers. Does this mean anything to you? He squinted at it. That looks familiar, but it's not one of ours. Ours? She asked. Who's ours? He looked down at the floor for a long time before answering. There was a project, he said finally, voice rasping like an old motor. More compartmentalized, less above board. We called it Zephyr. Most of us weren't told the end goal, just modular parts. I was tasked with testing non-satellite comms, radio frequencies that didn't rely on external relays. We were building systems for aircraft that couldn't afford a trace. Maya leaned in. Untraceable communications for stealth aircraft. He nodded. It was theoretical when I joined, but in '88 a prototype was tested off the Gulf. Something went wrong, system failure. The aircraft went down. His fingers curled tighter around the cup. No one survived, at least, that's what we were told. After that, Zephyr was erased, documents shredded, teams reassigned. But you remember the hardware, Maya said. The badges, the protocols. Yes, he said softly. They were rudimentary. Backdoors into logistics systems. Nothing fancy, but too effective. Someone must have pulled that design back from the grave. And weaponized it, Maya said, more to herself than to him. She studied him for a long moment, noting the subtle tremor in his hands and the crackle in his voice. There was no guile in the man, no sign of a double life. If anything, he seemed hunted like someone who had buried secrets for decades only to watch them claw their way back into the light. Mr. Brooks, she asked, do you have any idea who might have had access to Zephyr archives? Only a handful of names, most of them either retired, dead, or untraceable. Did you keep any files? But I kept one of the old design prototypes. For memory. It's in my garage. I'm going to need that, Maya said flatly. If the circuits match this card, we'll know someone's reverse engineering your past. He nodded slowly, seemingly relieved to have something to offer. Maya turned and stepped back out of the room, signaling to Adrian to prepare a secured courier team for immediate transport of the evidence. As she passed the console, the analyst called her back. We have something. She returned to the screen. On it was a declassified document from the early 90s, an internal memo referencing Project Zephyr, marked Zaius only, noting a small team reassigned to Lisbon under a privatized aerospace contractor named Orbison Systems. Orbison? Maya repeated. They went under after an audit in 2004, apparently not entirely, the analyst said. And here's the twist. One of their Lisbon subcontractors still uses an employee template badge with Zephyr's original format. Maya felt a cold certainty settle in her spine. You're telling me someone has access to a supply chain of ghost technology from a 30-year-old black-budget experiment. And they've integrated it into modern smuggling architecture, the analyst added. Smart. Recycled tech flies under radar. Literally, Maya muttered. So whoever's behind this isn't just smuggling intel. They're moving through infrastructure with clearance that officially doesn't exist. Her eyes fell again to the badge, harmless at a glance, but holding a blueprint of infiltration rooted in an era of secrets and paranoia. The Cold War had ended for most people, but not for everyone. Further lesson lighted. There was useful again. She turned toward the hall, radio already rising to her mouth. Control, get me Lisbon liaison. I need full employee rosters tied to Orbison systems and sub-suppliers over the last 5 years. Focus on those with legacy security access. Use Zephyr as a keyword filter. Copy that, came the voice on the other end. Expect delay. Lisbon archives are partially hard, but something about the subtle shift in the dog's stance made Maya pause. There was still something buried deeper. Something not in any report or badge scan. She placed her hand gently on Koda's head, the warmth grounding her for half a second before she turned her eyes back to the wheelchair shell still resting on the exam table. And then, almost too faint to notice, her gaze caught the edge of one remaining bolt. Maya stood over the shoulder of Luca Rodriguez, the department's best surveillance analyst, as the video feed from Lisbon's gate security played on a loop. Grainy but revealing. The timestamp blinked, 5:42 a.m., gate 16. Passengers milled around in bleary-eyed anticipation of boarding, and at the corner of the frame sat a row of standard airport-issued wheelchairs. Then the figure entered the frame, a man in a navy blue vest with a clipboard under one arm and a badge on a lanyard. He moved with purpose, not hesitation, weaving through the crowd until he reached the line of wheelchairs. He paused, glanced around with the practiced casualness of someone used to not being noticed, then knelt beside the third chair from the left. Maya leaned in as Luca zoomed, sharpening the resolution. The man's fingers worked quickly, too quickly for someone performing standard maintenance or assistance. A flick of his wrist, a small shift under the seat, a press at the footrest, then a subtle pat on the cushion before he rose and stepped away. Total time, 3.8 seconds. Maya exhaled slowly. Rewind. Watch his approach again. Luca complied. This time, Maya counted his glances left, right, never toward the overhead security dome. He wasn't avoiding attention. He was exploiting invisibility. "Can you run his badge?" Maya asked. "Doesn't exist in the airport's employee registry. Not with that color code, not with that layout. It mimics the airline's logo, but the shade of red on the corner is reversed. No real badge has that, meaning he was never supposed to be there." "Exactly," Luca confirmed. "And here's the bigger twist after he makes the adjustment to the wheelchair. He never boards the flight." Maya's gaze sharpened. "Where does he go?" "Watch." Luca tapped a few keys. The video advanced by 2 minutes. The same man walked calmly toward gate 14, where a different boarding line had formed, paused near a large vending machine, made a brief phone call, then slipped through the crowd and exited back toward the staff corridor. No further footage captured his presence, so he accessed a restricted area, tampered with mobility equipment in plain sight, and left without triggering a single security flag. "Correct," Luca said. "He didn't need to fly. The chair did." Maya felt the weight of that truth settle in her chest like a lead stone. Ezekiel wasn't selected because of who he is. He was selected because of what he isn't. He's not a risk, he's not suspicious. Old, he's clean, and he'd never check under the damn footrest. Which means, Luca added, he was the perfect unwitting courier. A ghost mule, Maya said under her breath. Smuggling intel without knowing he's part of the system. And if Koda hadn't frozen, those documents would have walked straight into the country. Maya finished grimly. Without a single soul realizing, Luca pulled up a second screen. I cross-referenced Lisbon's staff logs and security sign-ins. No one matching this guy's face clocked in through official access. But get this, facial recognition tagged him entering the airport at 4:13 a.m. through the diplomatic staff access bay. That entrance requires level 2 clearance. Maya snapped her head around. That door's supposed to be watched 24/7. It is. But the camera feed from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock was glitched exactly 60 minutes of scrambled data. That same hour matches 3 system patches logged from a server in Kiev. Maya stared at him. This was premeditated, coordinated at the software level. They killed the cameras, used stolen access, planted the intel, and left without boarding. And it worked, Luca said. At least until your dog decided otherwise. Maya nodded once. Keep digging. I want full movement tracking on that agent from the moment he entered the airport. I don't care if we have to call in foreign partners. We need his name, his affiliations, and whether he's already ahead of you, Lucas said, fingers flying over keys. Maya left the room and walked briskly down the corridor, her mind replaying the footage frame by frame. That man didn't hesitate. That movement, the precision of the install, the way he minimized contact told her he'd done it before. Many times. She stepped back into the secure processing room where Ezekiel still sat, this time with a light blanket draped over his legs. He looked up as she entered. You were telling the truth, she said flatly, about everything. His jaw tightened. I don't lie to uniforms. Not anymore. I know, Maya said, because someone used your trust against you. They exploited your history, your kindness, even your injuries, and turned you into a courier for classified material. Ezekiel swallowed hard. But why me? Because you were perfect, she said simply. A man who once worked with secret projects long forgotten. Someone whose records wouldn't ping any modern intelligence algorithms. Someone carrying a badge from the past, unknowingly carrying secrets from the present. I never saw him. I wasn't paying attention. That's how they designed it, Maya replied. He didn't need you to know. He needed you to move. Koda let out a low exhale, rising to his feet as if readying for a shift. Maya caught it immediately. The subtle language of movement, a whisper only she understood. Koda didn't bark. He never needed to. He simply indicated. Maya turned back to the evidence table where the badge still pulsed faintly under the UV lamp. She picked it up again and held it between thumb and forefinger. The microchip glinted like a sliver of ice. It's not just that the badge is old, she said aloud, though mostly to herself. It's that someone's figured out how to make the past invisible again. Adrian appeared at her side. We ran the composite on the wheelchair's inner shell. The material isn't just radar absorbent. It's layered with noise-canceling mesh. Something experimental. Not even DARPA lists. Maya's stomach sank further. They're not just smuggling data, they're testing cloaking methods through innocuous civilian objects. A dry run? Adrias asked. Or a proof of concept, she said grimly. If a wheelchair with embedded stealth tech makes it across borders without a trace, what's next? Cargo crates, airline catering trucks, commercial luggage. She glanced toward Koda, who now stood still as stone, his gaze no longer fixed on the room, but on the corridor beyond. A shadow flickered across the glass, barely visible. Maya narrowed her eyes. Luca, she said into her comm, do we have eyes on Bay 6 hallway cameras? Static crackled. Copy, checking now. Someone's here, she said calmly. But they don't want to be seen. She reached down and unclipped the safety on her sidearm just as the intercom buzzed from the far end of the hall. A voice unfamiliar. Clipped. Professional. Lieutenant Rhodes, package retrieval has been initiated. Stand by for secure transfer. Maya froze. There was no scheduled transfer. Not yet. Not from her end. And no one had clearance to request that. Maya didn't answer the voice on the intercom. She simply reached for the comm clipped to her collar and spoke low, crisp. Luca, confirm who authorized the transfer. Static gave way to a beat of silence. Then Luca's voice returned, tense and clipped. No one. There's no transfer order. It's a spoofed channel. Maya's hand was already on her weapon. Clack down the hallway. No one gets in or out until we verify every clearance manually. As the response clicked through, she turned to Adrian. Secure the badge, the documents, and the chair remnants. Triple seal them. No touch access without my biometric override. Adrian was already in motion. Koda, ever alert, pressed closer to Maya's right leg, his ears angled toward the closed door and his body still but poised. They were being watched. Of that she was certain. But whoever had breached the system was patient, testing reaction time. Checking protocol weakness. She wouldn't give them more. 10 minutes later, the lockdown was active, the hallway sealed, and Maya stood in front of the secure server interface while Luca mirrored their data to an off-site satellite node. The evidence was too hot to exist in only one location. Then a ping. An encrypted file drop arrived from Interpol's transnational task force, flagged with urgent priority and top-line access only. Maya opened it. Her eyes narrowed. What is it? Adrian asked. Maya didn't speak. She stepped into the side office, closed the door behind her, and enlarged the file. A forensic memo compiled just hours ago detailed two nearly identical smuggling incidents. One at Frankfurt International, one at Chicago O'Hare. Both within the last 8 months. Both targeting cargo security networks. Both executed via unwitting passengers using airport wheelchairs modified with hidden compartments. Lined in stealth composite. An elderly Turkish man returning from a pilgrimage had unknowingly transported a hard drive containing encrypted naval drone schematics. In Chicago, a paraplegic Brazilian woman carrying a spinal stimulator implant had sat in a chair wired with embedded biosurveillance chips, meant to bypass FDA cargo inspections. In both cases, customs had cleared them without incident. The contraband had been collected at nearby hotel rooms retrieved by individuals disguised as family members or medical staff. Neither passenger was charged. Both were deemed victims. Maya's chest tightened. The chair in Miami hadn't been a one-off. It was a pattern, worse, a tested model. The document named the wheelchair design as Series VNK27, traced back to a supplier in Warsaw known for shell corporations and one-time use contracts. That alone wouldn't have been enough to spark a federal alert. But then came the final paragraph. A photograph was attached. Grainy, taken from a Frankfurt employee lounge camera. The face wasn't clear, but the outline, the posture, the stance, Maya recognized it instantly. Her mouth went dry. 7 years ago, she had chased that man through 3 countries. He'd called himself Emil Varsek, then former state assumption cyber operative turned mercenary. He'd specialized in asymmetric disruption, network poisoning, hardware mimicry, infiltration through infrastructure rather than force. He'd used the systems already in place. He had no country, no clear ideology, just a skill set that made him valuable to anyone with the money or motive. Maya had helped capture him during a multinational operation outside Bucharest, after he'd facilitated a months-long smuggling chain involving prototype satellite components and multiple disappearances. She remembered every detail of that takedown, the way his hands didn't shake when the rifles were trained on him, the way he smirked as if already 10 moves ahead, and most of all, the cryptic message he'd whispered just before being dragged into custody. You can slow the signal, but you'll never trace the source. He'd vanished 6 weeks later during a prison transport in Slovakia. The files had been redacted, the logs erased, his name stripped from every formal chain of record as if he had never existed. Maya had tried to follow the trail, but her clearance hit wall after wall. Eventually, she had been reassigned. Now here he was again. Not as a headline, not as a whisper, but in the shape of an old wheelchair in the compromised routine of an airport. In the presence of a man like Ezekiel Harmley, selected for that very reason. Varchek wasn't smuggling anymore. He was perfecting a system. She stepped out of the office, her jaw tight. His name is Emil Varchek, she told Adrian. He's the architect behind this method. The one you chased in Romania? Adrian asked, already pulling up his own database. That Varchek, yes, he was erased from official intel after the transport incident. No records, no warrants, like he was a ghost. But he's not a ghost, he's a strategist. He's building a pipeline of human proxies to bypass global security. Adrian looked over. And we just cracked his latest link. No, Maya said. We just stumbled into it. He left breadcrumbs on purpose. Why? To measure our reaction. She paced slowly, her mind moving faster than her feet. Think about it. The batch he used, old encryption, modern mod. The stealth material, high-end traceable. The chair identical to 2 previous incidents. None of this is accidental. He wanted us to find it. His own voice gave a no-limited energy. The collaboration. Maya turned toward the glass, where Koda stood now with one paw lifted slightly off the floor. An alert posture she hadn't seen since their Syria deployment. She stepped to the door. Control, she said into her radio, check all exits logged within the last 60 minutes. I want footage of any medical staff, family pickups, transport vehicles, anyone who's come into contact with our terminal zone. Working on it now, came the response. Do you think he's here? Adrian asked. Not him, Maya said. His next pickup, he never delivers himself, he plants. Others retrieve. Her eyes swept the corridor again. And if someone spoofed our intercom, then they've already breached internal comms. That means we're on a timer. How long do we have? Adrian asked. Maya didn't answer. She just looked back once more at Ezekiel, who sat alone in the other room, unaware that the man behind the weight in his chair wasn't just a criminal but a ghost from Maya's past who knew exactly how to manipulate the pieces on the board. Maya had seen Koda alert in dozens of scenarios. Urban raids, embassy sweeps, underground storage facilities in Beirut and Palmyra. But this posture was different. Not rigid with tension, but slow, predatory, like a predator stalking something it couldn't see, but could sense. His right paw lifted, habered, then pressed forward gently as he crept 2 paces toward the evidence cart, nose angled down, not toward the documents themselves, but to the residual lining on the inside of the composite shell that once cradled the sealed pouch. Maya's breath caught. "Adrian," she said, barely above a whisper. "He's not reacting to the paper." Adrian's brow furrowed. "We ran particle sweep, then run it again," she said sharply. "Check for polymer signatures and synthetic conductive trace elements." "You think it's rigged?" "No," Maya replied. "I think it's smart." Adrian retrieved a molecular scanner and powered it up, moving slowly across the hollow of the stealth plate. Koda's ears twitched as the scanner emitted soft pulses. After 3 seconds, a faint yellow bar appeared on the screen, low-level readings. Not significant enough to trigger the default alert, but registering nonetheless. "I've got something," Adrian said. "Low-voltage conductive film. But it's not spread like a circuit, it's sprayed. Layered." "Flaxogenetic fibers?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer. "Has to be," Adrian confirmed. "We saw this in field testing during drone interference trials. Used in counter-Gadant signal dampening Syria, northern Iraq." "I remember," Maya said, eyes narrowing. "Koda trained on detecting it after we found that jamming rig buried under the comm tower in Deir ez-Zor. He barked once. They laughed. 2 hours later, the whole grid went dark." She stepped closer to the shell and leaned in, squinting against the harsh light of the lab. "It's not shielding, it's a trigger net." Adrian's eyes widened. "Meaning, someone could activate it remotely?" "Not for detonation," Maya clarified, "but to send a pulse 1 high sympathy. Spike in that chip in the badge goes live, connects to whatever back-end system it's programmed for." We've isolated it," Adrian said. "There's no signal in or out." "Now," Maya said, "but once it left the airport?" Adrian's jaw tightened. 3 minutes, he muttered. "Maybe less. The badge gets picked up at baggage claim, signal goes hot, piggybacks on open-on modulations. They could have full control of the chip and whatever interface it's tied to." "Which could be?" Maya prompted. Adrian looked at the judge. "Cargo manifests, flight schedules, perimeter door controls, custom shift rotations. If the system was mapped ahead of time, they'd have access to everything. And worse, if it's designed to write into those logs, we wouldn't know it happened. No trace." Maya felt her throat tightened. 3 minutes is all it would take to inject a payload, redirect a container, scrub an identity, or worse, prep for physical entry. Adrian looked at her. "And we almost let it walk into the city." Maya turned to Koda, who now sat perfectly still, eyes locked on the casing, nose flaring faintly with every breath. He didn't bark. He didn't move. But he'd note, not from sight, not from scent, but from something deeper. A pattern, a memory, a rhythm only a dog like him could recognize. "You remembered," she said softly, crouching beside him. "Even I didn't make the connection, but you did." Koda blinked once, slow and deliberate. Maya stood and turned to Adrian. "Seal the panel and the badge in signal-isolated containers. Triple layer. I want physical locks and EM shielding." "Already prepping it," Adrian said. Maya pulled up the photo stills from Frankfurt and Chicago. The chair model in each case was identical. The passengers different, the routes unique, but the method, a ghost net embedded in harmless equipment, was identical. Each time, the package was recovered within 20 minutes of landing. In Miami, they had cut it off before that could happen, because of Koda. Because something in the chemical signature, something in the way the signal matrix wrapped around the casing, had matched a hidden reflex from deep inside his condition. He had stopped walking, and that one act had prevented what could have become a live breach into federal infrastructure. Maya's comm buzzed again. "Luca here, just reviewed satellite ping logs for this terminal. You're going to want to see this." She moved fast, arriving at the analyst's console where he'd pulled up a heat map of wireless frequency modulations for the past 24 hours. "Look here," he said, pointing at a specific curve. 6 minutes before Ezekiel's flight landed, there was a low wave surge centered on the East Concourse short burst under 900 max. Shaped like a handshake request. "Pinged from where?" Maya asked. "That's the crazy part," Luca said. "The signal wasn't from inside the airport. It came from a car in the arrivals loop, parked for 38 seconds, then left. No plates, no facial hits, windows blacked out. But the signal matched one of our trace arrays." "And you're just telling me now?" "It was hidden inside a normal rideshare radio burst, camouflaged." Maya stared at the screen. "They were here, testing the link. Or attempting to activate it, Luca added. Except the badge never reached them. Maya turned to Adrian, who had just finished sealing the final containment unit. Tell me the nanofiber is stable. It is, he said. Now that it's isolated, there's no risk of it going active. Unless, Maya said slowly, someone gets close enough with a matching key, which we can't rule out, Adrian added grimly. If this operation includes retrieval agents, they may already be en route or embedded in nearby locations. Maya turned to Luca. Has Ezekiel received any messages, calls, or emails in the last 24 hours tied to anyone claiming to be Margaret Wilson? Luca clicked through encrypted logs. Yes. One message, untraceable origin, content deleted remotely, timestamped 11 minutes before landing. It just said, wait near the fountain, I'll come to you. Maya stepped back. They didn't need him to think, they just needed him to wait. Her mind was already spinning with possibilities. The signal in the lot, the disguised badge, the 3-minute activation window. It wasn't smuggling. It was staging. The chair was a delivery vehicle not just for intel but for digital invasion, and if it had passed undetected into the city, it could have cracked open everything. The system would never even blink, because the key wasn't coded. It was carried. And that key, that trigger, was still out there, waiting. Maya stood motionless in the center of the operations room, eyes fixed on the playback from the security feed that Luca had just enhanced. The image showed a woman standing near the main fountain in Terminal D. Shoulder-length dark hair, soft blue dress, cardigan tied loosely around her waist. A posture casual enough to seem comforting, practiced enough to feel rehearsed. She held a phone in her hand, pretending to scroll, but every 30 seconds she looked up toward the arrival gate. The timestamp matched the moment Ezekiel's flight had landed. Maya narrowed her eyes. Zoom in. Face enhancement. Luca tapped in the commands. The woman's face sharpened, revealing even the faint crease near her left cheek and the small gold stud in her ear. To the untrained eye, she looked like any woman waiting to welcome her father home. Maya leaned closer. Run facial recognition. See if she's in any civilian databases, DMV, federal clearances. The system processed the data, each percentage flickering as it scanned millions of images. Then it stopped. Max Fauf. Maya's stomach dropped. The name on the screen was not Margaret Given Wilson. It was Nadia Kristova, dual citizen American, former subcontractor to a defense logistics firm dissolved after a corruption scandal in 2017. No criminal record, no formal arrest, but flagged in 3 separate foreign intelligence watch lists for proximity to known asset handlers and suspected counterintelligence activity. Maya exhaled slowly. She was the pickup. Luca nodded. She arrived at the terminal 6 minutes before the flight landed. No checked baggage, no digital boarding pass. She entered through short-term parking, waited exactly 20 minutes and exited through a non-admissible rideshare. The vehicle never circled back. So she didn't come for him? Maya murmured. He came for the chair. Exactly, Luca said. And we just confirmed that the badge's activation signal was never received. She likely waited for it. When it didn't trigger, she pulled out. Maya turned to Adrian. Where's Ezekiel? Still in the holding room. He's calm, but shaken. Maya didn't respond right away. She walked to the door, opened it quietly, and stepped inside. Ezekiel looked up from where he sat, hands clasped loosely in his lap. His face was pale, eyes clouded with something that wasn't confusion anymore. It was fear, but deeper, rooted in recognition. You found her, didn't you? He asked, voice barely audible. Maya pulled the tablet from under her arm and handed it to him without speaking. He stared at the image for a long time. That's not Margaret, he said finally. His voice didn't shake, but it cracked in the middle, like something inside him tore loose. She doesn't stand like that. Margaret used to rock on her heels when she waited, always bounced a little. We know, Maya said gently, that woman's not your daughter. She's a known affiliate of covert logistics networks. She was here to intercept the chair. Ezekiel nodded slowly, handing the tablet back as if it were something fragile. I should have known, he whispered. I wanted it so badly to be real, that maybe I could fix something before it was too late. Maya took a seat across from him. Mr. Brooks, she said, her tone lowering into something more personal. We confirmed that Margaret Given Wilson passed away in a traffic collision 3 years ago. Coral Gables. You weren't notified? Ezekiel didn't look at her. He just stared past her shoulder, somewhere else entirely. We hadn't spoken in 4 years, he said quietly. After I told her I couldn't come to her graduation. I was consulting in Europe, something classified. Told myself it was important. She stopped answering my calls after that. I always figured I could fix it someday, but I never reached back out. I never thought. His hands gripped the sides of the chair. I didn't even know she was gone. Maya felt a knot form at the base of her throat. The message you received, the call to meet her. Someone used her name. They researched your history, exploited your loss. And I let them, Ezekiel said, more to himself than to her. I sat in that chair like a damn fool, excited to see my daughter, carrying something I didn't even know could cause harm. You couldn't have known, Maya said. You were targeted precisely because of that, because you wouldn't question it. They did, he said, nodding toward the hallway where Coda waited beyond the glass. He did. Maya offered a small smile. Yes, he did. A long silence settled over them, thick and heavy. Ezekiel rubbed his eyes with the base of his palms, trying to press something back in. I thought I was helping someone, even if it wasn't her, even if it was just a message, a chance to say sorry. But I walked right into it. You were deceived, Maya said. No way now. She rose to her feet, crossed to the console on the wall, and keyed into the secured comm line. Lock every rideshare gate exit. I want the profile of the woman we flagged, Nadia Kristova, distributed to TSA, airport security, and every ground agent in a 50-mile radius. Copy that, came the reply, and alert the FBI liaison. Maya continued. We need a quiet sweep of every contact she's made in the last 6 months. She's not working alone. She turned back toward Ezekiel, who still hadn't moved, his eyes now resting not on her, not on the door, but on the faint reflection of himself in the one-way glass. Can I call someone, he asked, voice trembling now. Anyone left? Maya paused. Is there someone you trust? Her mother passed, he murmured. I have a brother in Virginia. We haven't spoken in years either. But maybe it's time. Maya nodded. We'll make the call. She stepped out of the room, the door clicking shut behind her. Outside, Coda waited, his body low, tail still. She knelt beside him, brushing her fingers through the thick fur along his neck. You saw it first, she whispered. You always do. A chime from Luca's console interrupted the moment. Maya rose and moved toward the screens. What is it? Activity from Kristova's last known vehicle, Luca said. It pinged a relay outside of Little Havana, then vanished again. Too close, Luca nodded. And she's not alone. Maya narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? We just found a second signal. He tapped the screen. Pattern identical to the Frankfurt extraction. This time, it's embedded in a hospital wheelchair, registered to a rental agency across town. It was picked up 10 minutes ago by a courier van headed toward downtown Miami. Maya straightened, her voice low sharp. They're running another drop? Right now, Luca confirmed. DeFrank courier, same method. Maya turned toward the containment vault where the disabled chair sat, the badge still humming faintly inside its layered seals. Then, this isn't the end, she said. It's the middle. And as Coda rose silently beside her, she realized something deeper. This wasn't a breach, it was a bloop. 3 days after the incident, the operations room had quieted to a slow hum. The urgency gone, replaced by post-briefing fatigue and reports stacked in digital folders that Maya knew would be buried deeper once federal agencies assumed full jurisdiction. She had submitted everything. Every recording, every photograph, every line of encrypted code lifted from the chair's compartment, and every second of Coda's freeze frame. Her part was done, at least officially. Emil Varchek's name was already redacted again. The case handed off to departments with clearance levels she didn't have, and black budget layers that weren't meant to be understood. Miami was calm again, but inside her something remained unsettled. The kind of unfinished thread that no amount of tactical success could tie off. Ezekiel Brooks had been cleared of any wrongdoing and quietly released into protective accommodation by U.S. Marshals. No charges, no press, no record, just the name temporarily flagged in databases, and a past now haunting him harder than anything she'd seen in a courtroom. Maya had visited him once since his release just to check in. He hadn't asked for updates about the case or asked what would happen to Nadia Kristova or the rest of the network. Instead, he asked a question Maya wasn't ready for. Can I know where she's buried? At first, she hesitated. The request wasn't protocol, not within her scope, not within her rank. But there were things greater than rank, and Maya knew this was one of them. She filed a request for temporary civilian transport under agency supervision, citing psychological closure and civilian victim protocol. It was flagged, delayed, but ultimately approved, which was how, at precisely 9:02 a.m. on a gray Sunday morning, Maya pulled up in an unmarked government vehicle beside a quiet cemetery in Coral Gables, her uniform replaced by a plain black blouse, dark slacks, and a jacket with no insignia. In the passenger seat, Ezekiel sat stiffly, hands folded in his lap, a collared shirt tucked neatly under his coat, and eyes that hadn't rested in days. Coda lay curled in the back seat, tail draped over his paw, unmoving until the car rolled to a gentle stop beneath the shadow of a sprawling oak. Maya stepped out first, adjusting the holster at her waist more out of habit than need, then opened the passenger door. "We're here," she said softly. Ezekiel looked out at the rows of clean-cut stones and the path leading toward a modest plaque surrounded by fresh grass. He didn't move at first. Then, slowly, he stepped out, his knees cracking faintly under his weight. Maya waited as he stood there, unmoving, letting the air settle around him. Coda padded silently beside them, not on leash, just present, as if he understood the moment didn't need orders. The three of them walked down the path together. The only sound was the crunch of gravel and the rustling of wind through the trees. When they reached the plot, Ezekiel stopped. The marker was simple, marker given Wilson, beloved daughter 19862020. No flowers, just the silence of 3 years without a visit. He stared at it for a long time, unmoving. Then he dropped slowly to one knee. "I didn't even know you were here," he whispered. Not to Maya, not to the wind, but to the stone. "It should have come sooner. Should have been better." His voice caught. "You hated my work, hated how I disappeared into it. I thought I had time." His breath shuddered. "I thought I could call you when things calmed down, when I retired, when the world wasn't so damn complicated." Maya said nothing. She took 2 steps back, giving him space, the kind that had no protocol. Coda stood still beside him for a moment, then moved forward. The German shepherd didn't bark, didn't whine. He simply lowered his body and rested his head gently on Ezekiel's knee, the weight light but certain, as if saying, "I'm here, I know." Ezekiel's hand trembled as it moved to touch the dog's ear. Then, his shoulders shook, not from cold, not from anger, but from grief deep and old and buried so long he had forgotten it was there. He didn't sob. He broke, quietly, the way only men who've survived both war and silence can break. Tears rolled down his face, and his chest rose in sharp waves. Coda stayed still, unmoving, head resting, eyes closed as if to guard what was sacred. Maya turned away, watching the tree line sway. The wind was soft. A bird called somewhere in the distance. She swallowed against the tightness in her throat. This wasn't the kind of moment her reports captured. It wasn't the kind that made headlines or got you decorated. But it was the kind that mattered. She had seen men weep over missions. She had seen mothers scream in airport terminals. But this quiet surrender to sorrow, this reclaiming of love lost in the noise of duty and distance, this was something else, something sacred. She gave him as much time as he needed. No clock, no deadline. When Ezekiel finally rose, he wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his coat, nodded once toward the marker, then turned without a word. Coda followed, tail still, steps measured. Maya walked beside them in silence, the gravel softer now beneath their feet. As they reached the car, Ezekiel paused before opening the door. "Thank you," he said, voice rasping. "Not just for this, for believing me, for seeing me." Maya met his gaze. "You weren't invisible. They just counted on you thinking you were." He nodded once, then stepped inside. As Maya circled to the driver's seat, Coda hopped into the back again, curling into a familiar shape, a sentinel who had done more than protect he had witnessed. As they drove away from the cemetery, The sun broke faintly through the morning cloud cover, painting a soft gold light across the rearview mirror. Maya didn't look back. She didn't need to. Some missions ended with arrests, some with explosions. This one ended with a man crying beside a grave he didn't know existed, and a dog who didn't need words to know he had done exactly what he was born to do. In the end, Maya understood something deeper than any debriefing could teach. Justice wasn't always about stopping the enemy. Sometimes it was about helping the innocent find their way back to the truth and to the people they had lost along the way. And Coda, without medals, without rank, without speech, had done just that. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful canine stories like this one. What do you think was the most unforgettable moment? Coda's silent alert, or Ezekiel's final visit to his daughter's grave? And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? I read every single comment, and your stories always mean more than you think.